Today I will talk on surgical management of intercondylar fracture of the humerus using a triceps reflecting Anconis pedicle approach. Before discussing about fracture and approach, we will go through anatomy of the distal humerus. Distal humerus resembles a triangle with the medial and lateral columns making up the sides and the trochlea forming the base. Cylindrical distal humerus splays out into a narrow isthmus to form a medial and lateral triangular columns. Lateral column is at 20 degrees of valgus relative to the humeral shaft. Medial column is aligned 40-degree angle to the shaft and ends in a trochlea. Capitulum is angulated 32 to 40 degree anteriorly. Trochlea is angulated 25 degree anteriorly. Reconstruction of the pre-morbid anatomy of the trochlea is very important and is crucial to restoration of the motion and stability of the elbow joint. Coming to the distal humerus fractures, elbow joint fractures comprise 4.3% of all fractures. Distal humeral fractures comprise less than 0.5% of all fractures. Most commonly involve both the medial and lateral columns. Classification. AO classification is simplest one. A. Supracondylar fractures extra-articular, in that A1 epicondylar avulsion fracture, A2 simple metaphyseal fracture, A3 comminuted metaphyseal fracture. B. Unicondylar fractures, in that there are three types, B1, B2 and B3, and in B3 there are two types. B1 sagittal plane fractures, lateral condylar fractures including capitulum. B2 sagittal plane medial condylar fractures including trochlea. B3 frontal plane fractures, in that B3 1 capitulum, B3 2 medial condylar fractures. C. Transcondylar or bicondylar or intercondylar fractures, in that C1 is simple articular simple metaphyseal fracture, C2 simple articular comminuted metaphyseal fractures, C3 comminuted articular fractures. There is one more classification, that is RR classification. Type 1 involves the articular surface minimally displaced. Type 2 fragments displaced but not rotated. Type 3 fragments displaced and rotated. Type 4 comminuted fracture. Coming to the treatment. In 1937, Eastwood described the bag of bone technique for the treatment of intercondylar fractures of the humerus. The final outcome was weak and unstable elbow. Watson-Jones commented that even with a perfect anatomic reduction, the resulting joint movement is always less satisfactory than after less accurate reduction obtainable with external means. In 1943, Watson-Jones recommended closed treatment or a limited open reduction with the K-wires. Lambourte, in the first decade of the 20th century, was one of the first to describe operative techniques for stable osteosynthesis of the distal humerus. In 1960s, with the formation of ASIF group, former techniques to obtain anatomic reduction with a stable fixation began to evolve. Then what are the problems of intercondylar fracture fixation? It is a highly constrained elbow joint, narrow supracondylar isthmus, sparsity of advocate subchondral metaphyseal supporting bone, comminution and osteoporosis. There is a lot of controversy and there are a lot of implants available in the market to fix the intercondylar fractures. In my opinion, the implant makes little difference, but the technique of the surgeon makes a big difference. You should know how to fix it and how to reduce it. The implant should be placed in a biologically friendly manner. Stability is enhanced by situating plates at right angles to each other. That was published in 1990s. Two plates and separate pillars on different surfaces. Subcutaneous location of the plate may cause symptoms. There is still a lot of controversy whether to put a plate on one parallel, one perpendicular on the posterior surface or on the lateral and medial surfaces. But in my opinion, these things make a little difference, but you have to reduce it anatomically and fix it with a proper plate, and it should be stable fixation. Dorsal application of the both plates provides a stable configuration, less extensive dissection, ulnar nerve retraction is minimized, and a low incidence of complication. Coming to the investigations, in my opinion, X-ray is enough. Do an AP and lateral, if possible, oblique radiographs. AP radiographs elbow flexed at 40 degrees, X-ray perpendicular to the distal humerus. Oblique radiographs aid in assessing the multiplane involvement. Rarely CT scan is required, but that won't make a big difference, because anyway you have to open the fracture and see with your eyes and fix it. Just it helpful in medical legal issues. Otherwise X-ray is enough. Coming to the approaches to the elbow joint, surgeons have approached elbow joint from all the direction, front, back, medial, lateral. Preferred approach to the distal humerus is posterior. The front door to the distal elbow is through the back. In the posterior approach, there are different types are there: triceps splitting, triceps reflecting, and olecranon osteotomy. Coming to the triceps splitting approach, advantages are technically easy. Intact tracheal notch of the ulna acts as the template. Lack of implanted hardware. Potential to proceed with the arthroplasty if required. The triceps splitting approach has some negative effect on muscle strength. The weakened reattachment, direct muscle injury with the resultant fibrosis, and injury to the intramuscular nerve branches. Coming to the olecranon osteotomy, the advantage is exposure is good. Almost 57% of the joint can be seen. Proven track record, but it has got problems. The non-union of the osteotomy site, intra-articular adhesions, arthritis, and denervation of the anconis. The median exposed articular surface through three different approaches is: triceps splitting is almost 35%, triceps reflecting 46%, olecranon osteotomy provides the maximum visibility of the intra-articular surface, that is almost 57%. But 30% of the non-union of the olecranon in distal humerus fractures with the transverse osteotomy, and 7% patients delayed union of the olecranon osteotomy. That means almost 37% patients will have complications related to osteotomy itself. 27% patients required removal of the wires used to repair the osteotomy of the olecranon, and this was for the symptoms related to the wires and for the septic olecranon bursitis. All patients had a loss of strength with the olecranon osteotomy or a triceps splitting approach. Then which is the ideal approach? Ideal surgical exposure for the internal fixation distal humerus fracture should provide adequate exposure of the joint. It should be extension if required. You should extend it. Soft tissue dissection without osteotomy. Dissection in the internal nervous planes, not across the nerves. All surgical alternative procedures to be performed through the same exposure. Rapid rehabilitation. Subsequent reconstructive surgery incorporating the same exposure. If it provides all these advantages, then that is an ideal approach. In 2000, Ortho Clinical North America, there was an article on triceps reflecting anconus pedicle approach for the distal humerus fracture and non-unions. That is the trap approach. The dissection in this approach is intranervous planes and not across the nerves. In this diagram, you can see the diagrammatic representation of the trap approach. In this, the anconus is detached from the lateral condyle of the humerus from the posterior surface, and from the insertion to the olecranon with the knife. You should avoid cautery, it will burn the muscles. Dissection should be clean. Elevate the insertion origin of the anconus muscle with the triceps from its attachment to the olecranon and the proximal ulna, and reflect it with the capsule backwards. It preserves the nerve supply to the anconus and blood supply to the anconus muscle. In this diagram, you can see the reattachment of triceps and anconus muscle. This approach can be used for the fixation of the fresh fractures, non-unions, and even fractures of the lower third of the humerus. You can see a intercondylar fracture extending up to lower third of the humerus in this X-ray, and you can see the post-operative X-ray, both the condyles fixed with the recon plate placed perpendicular to each other. Coming to the post-operative therapy, the reattachment should be proper. And you can start gentle, active and active assisted range of motion exercises after 2 weeks after stitch removal. Active extension was prohibited until 6 weeks. Avoid active extension until 6 weeks. Resisted extension started at 8 weeks. Avoid resisted extension for 2 months. The trap approach is a quicker to expose and easier to repair. It allows extensive distal humerus exposure including the supracondylar and intercondylar area. Repair is easy and strong enough to allow rapid rehabilitation. Elbow arthroplasty can be done through the same approach. Most importantly, with the trap approach, we can avoid iatrogenic fracture and its problems, which are seen in more than 40% of patients with the olecranon osteotomy.